Good evening. You are tuning into AWANI Tonight with me, Saraya Mia. New law to allow additional government spending without legislative's approval. And should UMNO hold party elections before GE15? That's coming up. A new law gazetted today will temporarily allow the Finance Ministry to approve additional spending of the federal government's funds beyond the budget without getting Parliament's approval during state of emergency. According to this law, Menteri Besar and Chief Ministers of states and territories in the country will similarly be able to approve additional spending in state government funds beyond initial budget without having to get approval of state legislative assemblies.
This was done through the introduction of Section 10A and 10B into the original Emergency Ordinance, with this new provision titled Temporary Financial Provisions. Under Section 10B, the temporary financial provisions will apply as long as the emergency remains in force. This new law takes effect from today. Malaysia has been put under a state of emergency from January 11th until the expected end date of August 1st, unless lifted earlier.
The government today announced a partnership with 5 corporate companies to help advertise the importance of being vaccinated. Program Minister Khairi Jamaluddin said this partnership is significant in speeding up the national COVID-19 immunization program.
I think the first expectation that we have from all these partnerships is to see an increase in the registration numbers. So all of the partners today have agreed that the first priority for this partnership will be to utilize all their channels, whether the channels are delivery in terms of post and grab, whether their channels are retail, whether their channels are in the NGO sector, whether their channels are through sport athletes who are influencers, to convince and to influence people to register for the vaccination. So the more people that are involved in convincing the public to register, the more counters they see, the more influencers they hear, the more flyers they read, should contribute towards an increase in the registration number.
The corporation companies include Post Malaysia Berhad, Grab Malaysia, Parks and Corporation Sendirian Berhad, St. John Ambulance, and Living Minds Sendirian Berhad. As of 30th March, 7.4 million, or a little over 30% of the population over the age of 18, have registered to be vaccinated. Meanwhile, private healthcare providers target to vaccinate those in multinational companies and GLCs once the vaccines can be privately procured. President of Association of Private Hospitals Malaysia, Datuk Dr. Kuljit Singh said by allowing private sectors to run a parallel vaccination drive, it will help the government to speed up the progress of achieving herd immunity.
Private hospitals are willing to help out private companies by procuring vaccines which are approved by the government, so that the private companies can actually send their workers, their staff for vaccination. So we can streamline this for many of the multinational companies, for many of the GLCs, and also for any private entities, including foreigners, so that it is easy for them to get vaccinated once we have private vaccination available in the hospital. This will help the economic frontliners so that the economy of the country can slowly start recovering without much fear of the pandemic.
Bersatu and PAS will maintain their political cooperation through Perikatan Nasional into the 15th general election. According to a statement from Secretary Generals of both parties, the decision was reached after the meeting involving the presidents of both parties yesterday.
They said their parties remain committed to reinforcing Muslim unification and the unity of the entire diverse community and were prepared to work with parties that support this vision. The two leaders said their parties choose to continue with PN in the interest of the political stability that was vital for the nation still grappling with the COVID-19 pandemic.
Now we focus on UMNO. Yesterday, Cabinet Minister Khairi Jamaluddin mooted the idea for UMNO to bring forward its party elections if it wants to resolve its internal problems before the next general election. However, is that the answer? Political analyst, Associate Professor Dr. Hamidin Hamid shares his thoughts.
KJ's suggestion to have elections on UMNO leadership before the general election obviously is an attempt to reduce the faction that is happening in UMNO. But I don't think the election will solve many of the problems faced by UMNO leadership as it is now. I think what's happened, if the election is held, definitely some people who are having a problem in court and other will still remain in the office. So with that, I don't think it will solve any problem. But definitely, it will create more faction, and the faction will definitely affect UMNO in facing of the general election.
If that's the case, how can UMNO introduce a fresh leadership without holding party polls? And how will this impact the party dynamics?
Yes, election is one of the way for UMNO to bring in new faces in their leadership line. However, looking at the current situation and looking at how the current leadership, even people who have court cases grips on UMNO leadership, I don't think the election will bring many changes in UMNO as it is now. UMNO is very conservative in that sense. So in that sense, I think UMNO will still hold to what they know most, especially among the leaders that they are most familiar with.
We'll take a short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. Effective April 1st, the ruling allowing 30% of employees to work from office in the Conditional Movement Control Orders CMCO areas will be abolished. Senior Minister Datuk Sri Ismail Sabri Yaakob said this decision was taken to allow management and supervisory groups of companies to operate at maximum levels. While some have been working from home for the past year, would they be comfortable making this transition? Datuk Johan Idris, managing partner of KPM Malaysia, weighs in.
Obviously, in working from office perspective, there will be a lot more people will be happy to come to work in office as long as there's proper SOPs that's being planted and the employees are looking at the health of everyone in the organization. So I can see there is a increasing number of people who have recently working from home, trying to find ways to come back to office, because I think so. They are lethargic to work from home. They want a different environment, and office is a conducive environment for them to work. Cases are still on the high, but people are much more aware of where these cases are coming from. People do read, and I think so. The government being transparent has helped to facilitate the confidence of people in the workplace, and they know where it's coming from. The higher number is coming from Selangor. I know which part of Selangor. So they are comforted on that. I mean, having a clear information about where these clusters are is very important.
On to international news. The cockpit voice recorder, or CVR, of flight Sriwijaya Air that plunged into the Java Sea last January was recovered today. Divers found the beacon of the CVR days after the crash, but took nearly 3 months to recover the memory unit. The unit that records flight crew conversations is important in determining the true cause of the crash that killed all 62 passengers on board. One of the Boeing 737-500 jet's black boxes was discovered earlier from the wreckage-littered seabed. A preliminary report into the crash last month said Indonesian pilots reported multiple problems with the 26-year-old jet's throttle system before the crash. However, investigators said it was too early to pinpoint an exact cause for the crash. Violence continue across Myanmar as anti-coup protesters held candlelit vigils on Tuesday night in defiance of the military rule. 8 protesters died on Tuesday as thousands marched overnight demanding the restoration of elected government and release of leader Aung San Suu Kyi.
During a video meeting on Wednesday, Suu Kyi, who was detained since the February 1st coup, appeared in good health according. Her lawyer Min Min Soo said the meeting discussed only legal cases filed against Suu Kyi. Her hearing is set on April 1st. In other news, the US State Department ordered the departure of non-essential diplomats from Myanmar amid the crackdown. This is an update from the previous instruction of voluntary departure of non-emergency government employees and family members last February.
Tonight on Consider This, we continue our conversation about Election Commission's delay in implementing the constitutional amendment to lower the voting age. Tonight, we speak to 3 youth leaders about the implications of this move in reshaping Malaysian politics and policies. That's coming up. That is all we have for you on AWANI tonight. Get the latest news updates on COVID-19 and COVID-19 vaccines from astroawani.com and Astro AWANI app. I'm Saraya Mia. We'll see you tomorrow.